My next guest didn't have a birth certificate till she was 9, stepped foot in a classroom till she was 17, or know about the Holocaust until her first semester of college. That's because Tara Westover was raised by Mormon survivalist parents who taught her doctors were heathens, the police were the Illuminati, and not to be trusted, and that public school would brainwash her into thinking like them. So instead, she worked in her father's junkyard in the mountains of Idaho, was homeschooled by her midwife and herbalist mother, along with her 6 sisters and brothers, and was on the wrong end of much physical and emotional abuse along the way. When she decided to leave, she taught herself from an ACT book and scored so high she not only got into college, she got a scholarship, eventually getting her PhD in history from Cambridge University. She writes about it all in her new best-selling memoir. It's called Educated, which made it on the Barack Obama's summer reading list, as well as Bill Gates' list of best 5 books of 2018. And by the way, if I had a list, it would make mine too. Tara Westover, great to see you. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Why'd you write this thing?
Why did I write it? Oh, you're starting with the easy questions.
What is the easy answer?
I don't know if there is an easy answer. I had this strange experience with education, so I wanted to write a story that was about education. That was more than just about degrees and certificates, but about all the ways education changes your life. And for me, one of the ways it changed my life was I had a difficult relationship with my family. They were kind of radical. I loved them very much, but it became very difficult for us to continue to be kind of a family almost because of the extremism.
You know, you said something where I got it totally wrong. You were with Marjorie Egan and me on the radio today, and I think I don't know who asked you about how hard it had to be to write about some of these literally and figuratively painful experiences, and you said it was the reverse. That it was easier to write about them and harder to write about what and why.
Because I was writing about estrangement, and I think I became estranged from half my family, including my parents, and for me, there was a period of years after that happened that it was just a lot easier for me to focus on the negative things and remember only the bad things, because then I didn't have to feel like it was a loss. I didn't really lose anything. They were so awful. And I think writing the book, I had to kind of write about some of those things that were really valuable to me, and I had to kind of reclaim them. And it was good, but it was also kind of painful.
Do you mind describing one horrible sequence? Do you mind doing this thing when your brother grabs you out of bed for? Do you mind giving us
I had a brother who was really complicated. He could be a really kind, loving person. He could be really empathetic, but he also, a friend of mine once put it this way, where she said he had an incredible ability to make you hate yourself as much as he hated himself. And so for me, how that looked when I was about 15, 16, he would grab me by my hair, drag me through the house, shove my head in a toilet. His nickname for me was Whore, which really, as a young girl, that gets into your kind of self-definition. It's the way you think of yourself becomes bound up with things like that.
Do you forgive him and your family for what they did to you?
I do, but I think forgiveness is different than reconciliation. I think forgiveness is, as often as not, something that you do for yourself as much as for other people.
Oh, I see. What allowed you? I mean, we've read stories about people who've suffered really difficult childhoods, which sounds almost like a euphemism in your case, and not survived. You not only survived, but you prospered, to say the least. What's different about you? I know you're a fairly humble person. From the little I know
I think I am, really.
No, well, I think you are,
really.
actually. Well, then good. Then you can answer this question. What's different about you from those who don't make it out whole?
I don't know the answer to that. I do know I definitely got a lot of help. I had an older brother who helped me, not the one that had trouble, but the other one. I had people in college who helped me an incredible amount. I had an LDS, a Mormon bishop, really early on, who just put a lot of energy into helping me. Even offered to pay for medical surgeries, things I needed because I didn't have any money. And so I had a lot of, I guess good Samaritanism that was in my life. And as for the other factors, I really don't know. I can't really explain that.
Almost everybody I've spoken to who's read your book, which is almost everybody, has a different story to tell that stuck with them. The one that stuck with me more, we also mentioned this briefly today, tell the story about what you didn't know when you got to BYU in a rather, I'll start with what I think is maybe I don't know if they can rank humiliation. Talk about what you didn't know when you raised your hand and asked the question. What was that about?
One of my first lectures, I raised my hand and I asked what the Holocaust was, because I had not heard of it before. And that was just one of a lot of things I hadn't heard before. I mean, for one thing, actually, I should say, don't do that. I mean, people, the other students, I think, they didn't really hear me asking a sincere question. What they heard me asking was, like, what is this? As a denial? I think they heard it as anti-Semitism. And so, yeah, it was very alienating. You're in a situation where you don't know things. Everybody else does know things. Something big like that, you have to come to terms with something really awful. Then the fact that something on that scale could happen and you could not know about it, which is just, I think all of us, our world is kind of made for us by other people. What we know about the past, it comes from other people.
And you also got the Rosa Parks story a little bit off, wrong?
Yeah, I mean, I'd never heard of the Civil Rights Movement. I'd heard of slavery, but I'd never heard of the Civil Rights Movement. So when I was in college and the professor said that she'd been arrested for taking a seat on a bus, I assumed that she had stolen the seat. Like, it was a really unfortunate confusion of to take a seat versus, like, to take the seat. And to me, I had no context for any of this. It made way more sense to me that she would get arrested for stealing something than for sitting down on a bus. I mean, it's kind of incomprehensible if you don't have context that there would be a time in this country where you couldn't sit somewhere on a bus because of the way you looked.
When you're telling stories about your life, about your book, or when you were writing it, do you ever have an out-of-body experience considering where you are now and have a hard time believing that that young woman was you?
I probably more have a hard time believing that this person is me.
That you came out the other side?
My Idaho life feels pretty real, and I'm still kind of adjusting to the rest of it.
Is there a lot of her still in you?
Yeah, probably.
Like what?
I would hope so. Joan Didion has that beautiful line that you should always stay on nodding terms with the people you used to be. And I like to think that we're at least on nodding terms.
Am I way, way over the line if I say that at least part of what I read suggested to me a little bit of the discussion we've had about the Trump-urban divide in this country? Is that, like, wildly out of place or no?
It's wildly. I mean, my book isn't representative of rural. I mean, everyone in my town went to school. They went to the doctor. They had birth certificates. So I don't think that you could say my family's representative of the rural U.S. But I hope that it could shed some light on that issue because I wanted to write a book that would take people who are in some ways caricatures. They're radical. They believe in these extreme things. But they're full and complete human beings. I mean, they're complicated people. My brother's a complicated person. My father's a complicated person. And I always try to see people kind of as people and not necessarily just as kind of through this ideological.
What's the moral to the story? Is there a moral to your story?
I hope not. No, I mean, I didn't write the book as a moral. I wrote the book to be experiential. That's what distinguishes it from an essay. I don't have a thesis. I don't say, here is what my life means. I try to write it in a way where you experience it. And the thing about writing something that is experiential is if two people have had the same experience, they might feel differently about what it means. And some people will come up to me at events and say, I'm really happy for you because I just know that you're going to reconcile with your family and it's right around the corner and I'm really happy. And then other people will come up to me and say, I'm just so glad that that's over and you're never going to go back into that again. And I kind of feel like that probably has a lot more to do with them than it does with me, and I support both of those interpretations. It's a story, and people get to take out of it whatever they need to.
Before you leave, so when you have Barack Obama, as I said at the beginning, you're on his reading list, you're on Bill Gates' reading list. What's that like feel to a kid from the mountains of Idaho?
Like I said, I think that's the surreal bit where I don't quite know what's happening.
Well, it is happening. Your book is otherworldly great. Tara,
Thank
it's a pleasure to see you. Thanks so much for your time. Tara Westover is her name. The book, again, is Educated.